So let's talk about Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby. It's a film that took the beautiful, quiet poetry of F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel and just cranked the volume all the way up to 11. It's dazzling, it's divisive, and today we're going to decode it. And you can just feel that pressure in every single frame, can't you? I mean, adapting what many people call the great American novel, that's a huge undertaking. This is a book that really lives in its language, in its melancholy tone, which leads to the biggest problem of all. Exactly. This was the massive puzzle facing Luhrmann. How on earth do you take all of that internal thought, all that poetry, and turn it into a cinematic spectacle without, completely losing the soul of the story? Well, his solution was radical, and it created this massive divide. You either loved it or you absolutely hated it. There was really no in-between. So to really get what he was trying to do, we're going to break it all down. We'll start with this idea of the unfilmable novel. Then we'll dive into how he turns all that spectacle into actual substance. We're going to decode the style, put the narrator himself on trial, and then at the end, we'll ask the big question. Was it a masterpiece or just a glorious failure? Okay, let's jump right in with that first big challenge. Luhrmann knew, he absolutely knew, you can't just film the pages of this book. It would never work. He had to basically invent a whole new cinematic language to even begin to tell this story. And this is the theory he leaned into. It's this idea from a theorist named Linda Hutcheon, and it's called repetition without replication. The idea is this. Luhrmann wasn't trying to replicate the book's quiet, moody feeling. No way. He was trying to repeat its core themes. The insane excess, the obsession, the rot at the core of the American dream, but using the loud, aggressive language of modern movies. Which brings us right to the heart of why this movie is so controversial. For Baz Luhrmann, all that over-the-top, in-your-face visual style, that wasn't just window dressing. That was the substance. That was his entire argument right there on the screen. And to build that argument, man, he used a full arsenal of tricks. But here's the thing, and this is so crucial. None of this was just for show. Every single choice, from the wild 3D to the words literally floating on screen, it was all there for a very specific reason. Just take the 3D, for example. Normally you think 3D is for making things feel big and open, right? Well, Luhrmann flips that completely on its head. He uses it to make you feel claustrophobic. He's throwing confetti and champagne right in your face, shoving you into the dizzying chaos of those parties. And then he uses that same technology to make the green light at the end of the dock feel impossibly, painfully far away. It turns a gimmick into a perfect symbol of just how out of reach Gatsby's dream really is. And the camera itself is basically telling you who has the power. Look at the Buchanans, Tom and Daisy. Old money. The camera keeps a respectful distance, shooting them in these polite mid-shots. It gives them this air of being untouchable. But Gatsby? Oh no. The camera gets right up in his face with these extreme close-ups, showing every bead of sweat, every nervous twitch. It's like he's a specimen under a microscope, constantly being watched, constantly being judged as an outsider. But it goes way beyond just the camera work. Luhrmann builds this entire world of symbols using this super saturated color palette and, of course, that infamous anachronistic soundtrack. And trust me, nothing in here is an accident. The color green is everything in this film, and it's constantly pulling in two directions. On one hand, it's that green light, right? It's the dream, the hope, this perfect future Gatsby is reaching for. But what other color is green? It's the color of cold, hard cash. The very thing that fuels his dream is also the very thing that corrupts it from the start. And he does the exact same thing with the color white. We see Daisy constantly surrounded by these flowing, billowing white curtains, wearing these pure white dresses. It's all designed to scream innocence and purity. But the way it's lit, it's also cold and sterile. It reveals that beneath that mask of purity, there's a void, an emptiness, the cold indifference of her social class. Okay, we have to talk about the music. Jay-Z in the Jazz Age, what was that about? Well, it wasn't about being historically inaccurate. It was about being thematically authentic. Think about it. In the 1920s, jazz was the rebellious, dangerous music that shocked the older generation. But for us, today, jazz feels classic, almost safe. So, to make a modern audience feel that original shock of the new, Luhrmann needed a modern equivalent, and that was hip. All right, now we need to get to the film's biggest, and I mean biggest, departure from the book. And that's the decision to put our narrator, Nick Carraway, in a sanitarium. Now, purely from a filmmaking point of view, this is kind of a brilliant move. It immediately gives us a reason for Nick's constant voiceover. And all that text you see floating on the screen, well, that's him literally writing the book we're watching. It makes what's usually a passive literary tool into something active and dynamic. But it does something way more important. It forces us to question everything. If Nick is this traumatized man writing the story as therapy, well, how much can we really trust his version of things? Is Gatsby really all that great? Or is that just a romantic story this broken man is telling himself to make sense of all the trauma? Suddenly, the whole story becomes suspect. So, what does this all add up to? You've got this CGI-fueled, hip-hop blasting, 3D assault on a literary classic. So, was it a success? Or was it what some critics called it? A glorious failure. Well, here's the final take. Luhrmann absolutely sacrifices the novel's subtle, quiet literary power, no doubt about it. But in its place, he creates something else entirely, this visceral, immersive experience of the book's core ideas. It's not a replication, it's a repetition, perfectly translated for a generation that speaks the language of spectacle. He captures the grotesque beauty of the American dream by making us fall in love with its dazzling, intoxicating surface, right before he lets the whole thing collapse into tragedy. He doesn't just tell you the party is hollow, he throws you headfirst into the party and makes you feel the emptiness for yourself. And in the end, that's the film's real power. It takes Fitzgerald's world from the 1920s and makes it feel incredibly urgent and personal right now. By throwing us into this spectacular dream and its equally spectacular failure, it leaves us with this haunting question about our own lives, our own obsessions, and that elusive green light that maybe, just maybe, we're all still chasing.